You leave in the morning thinking everything behind that closed door will simply wait for you. A quiet house. A sleeping cat. Nothing to worry about. That's the comforting story most people tell themselves as they grab their keys and step out into the day. But inside that same house, something very different begins the moment your footsteps fade away. Your cat doesn't understand schedules or hours or, "I'll be back soon." The silence that follows your exit doesn't feel like peace to them the way it does to you. It feels like change. And for a creature built to notice every small shift in its world, change is never ignored. So they begin to watch, listen, wait. And sometimes the things we leave behind, out of love, habit, or pure misunderstanding, don't bring comfort at all. One of the most common is sound. The TV left on, the radio playing softly, a human voice filling the room so the house doesn't feel empty. It seems thoughtful. Feels like company. But to a cat it isn't soothing at all. Their hearing catches everything in layers you can't even imagine. A sudden laugh, a sharp commercial jingle, a voice rising too quickly, these don't blur into background noise. They hit like interruptions in a world that was otherwise predictable. What you intended as comfort can become a constant cycle of alertness. Something is happening. Something is changing. But they can't find where it's coming from. And they can't make it stop. Many cats don't relax more with sound in the house. They become quietly tense, always half waiting for the next unpredictable burst. And yet, silence isn't emptiness to them. It's clarity. A steady environment where nothing unexpected jumps out of the air. Sometimes what feels like loneliness to us feels like safety to them. Then there's the window. It seems small, almost forgettable in your morning routine. But to a cat, a window is not just glass. It is the entire world condensed into moving stories. Birds tracing invisible paths. Leaves drifting without warning. People passing like characters in a silent play they study every single day. When that window is blocked or the sill cleared in a way that removes access, something essential disappears with it. Hours of meaning. Hours of motion. Hours that break the stillness of being alone. A cat without that view doesn't just rest more. They often rest less peacefully. Because boredom in their world isn't laziness, it's a kind of pressure that builds slowly in the background. And then, in another attempt to protect them, many homes become too closed off entirely. Doors shut to bedrooms, bathrooms, entire sections of the house sealed away for safety or cleanliness. But to a cat, those closed doors don't represent order. They represent missing territory. Their world is not just where they are, it's what they can access. And when parts of it suddenly vanish, it creates a quiet, lingering uncertainty. Something is behind there. Something has changed. And they are not allowed to know what. That uncertainty follows them more than we realize. Even the kitchen, often the center of routine, carries its own hidden risks. A washing machine left open becomes a soft, dark invitation. A space that feels like shelter. Warm. Enclosed. Safe. Until it isn't. Suitcases, boxes, laundry drums. These become temporary hiding places that can turn dangerous in a moment of human distraction. A simple habit of leaving something open becomes something far more serious when curiosity meets routine. And all of this is before the day even truly unfolds. Because every small choice we make before leaving, every sound left on, every space closed off, every object left unattended, becomes the environment they live inside while we are gone. And they are always living inside it completely, without interruption, without explanation, and without knowing when we will return to fix what we didn't even realize was broken. This is only the beginning of what happens in those hours we never see. The hours stretch differently once the door closes. Not in a straight line like you experience at work or outside, but in pauses, in waiting, in small moments that feel larger than they should. A cat doesn't measure time in clocks. They measure it in changes that do or don't happen. And by the middle of the day, the house has already started to become a test of everything you left behind. One of the quietest breaking points comes from something most people don't even think twice about before leaving. The litter box. To a human it's a task. Something you do when you get home if you forgot in the morning. But to a cat, it is something far more important. It is control. Cleanliness. Safety. A place that is supposed to always be acceptable no matter what else changes. When it isn't, the discomfort doesn't wait politely. It forces a decision. And that decision often happens long before you return. Not out of spite. Not out of confusion. But because there is no other option that feels right in that moment. A rug becomes the nearest acceptable place. A bathroom mat becomes a substitute. Somewhere, anywhere that doesn't carry the same overwhelming sense of wrongness. You might walk in later and feel frustration or disappointment, but the truth is much simpler. The system they rely on was unavailable. and they had to solve a problem you unknowingly left unsolved. Then there are the smallest things that suddenly become the biggest risks when no one is watching. A hair tie left on a counter. A piece of string from a parcel. A loose thread from clothing. On their own, they look harmless, forgettable even. The kind of things you don't notice until you need them again. But to a cat left alone with time and curiosity, they are different. They move. They roll. They respond. They become something to chase, something to bite, something to test. And what begins as play can turn into something they cannot undo. There is no understanding in that moment that something ordinary has become dangerous. Only instinct. Only attraction. Only the simple pull of curiosity that doesn't stop to ask questions. And somewhere in the house, another quiet need slowly builds without anyone noticing. Water. One bowl left in the morning seems enough. It always seems enough. Until it isn't there anymore. Until it's been tipped over without anyone seeing. Until something floats in it that makes it unappealing. Until it sits too far from where they are resting to feel worth the trip. And so they wait. Or they look. Or they settle for less than they should. Not because water isn't available in theory, but because access is fragile in ways we rarely consider. A second bowl placed in another room feels unnecessary when you leave. But to them, it becomes the difference between easy comfort and silent compromise. And in those small gaps, the body quietly adapts to what is missing. Even the things that seem alive but still, the green presence of plants inside the home, carry their own hidden story. A cat doesn't see decoration. They see texture, movement, something new in their territory. And what looks harmless to you can sometimes be something their body cannot handle at all. A single bite, a moment of curiosity, something tested just once out of boredom, can lead to consequences that don't appear immediately. Sometimes the danger is delayed, quiet, unfolding long after the moment has passed. Which is what makes it so easy to miss. Because nothing looks wrong, until it suddenly is. And then there is the final misunderstanding people make without realizing its weight. Leaving for just a day or two. It sounds harmless. Logical even. A stocked bowl, a clean space, everything prepared before you go. In human terms, it feels like enough. But the house doesn't experience those days the way you do. It doesn't feel your return on a schedule. It doesn't understand that absence has an end date. The first day is waiting. The second is uncertainty. And after that, something shifts that is harder to explain but easy to feel in behavior. Withdrawal, restlessness, changes that come not from hunger or need alone, but from disconnection. Because a cat isn't only reacting to what is missing physically. They are reacting to who is missing. And even the most perfectly prepared home cannot replace the simple, grounding presence of being seen, heard, and acknowledged in the middle of their world. By the time you are halfway through your day, everything may feel normal in your life. But in theirs, the story of your absence is still unfolding, quietly, carefully, shaped by every small detail you didn't think twice about before leaving. And what comes next is not always visible at all. By the time the day starts to wind down, something subtle has already changed inside the house. It doesn't announce itself. There is no sudden shift, no obvious sign that everything has been building toward this moment. Just a quiet atmosphere that feels slightly heavier than it did in the morning. A cat feels that difference immediately. The world you left behind was supposed to be temporary. But temporary has stretched. And now every sound, every shadow, every routine corner of the home carries a different meaning than it did when you walked out the door. Even safety, when poorly prepared, begins to show its cracks in small, invisible ways. A window left open, just a little, for fresh air becomes a risk that doesn't feel like a risk until it suddenly is. Outside movement, a bird, a flicker of wings, something passing too close, can turn a calm moment into a split-second decision driven entirely by instinct. There is no pause for judgment. No awareness of height or consequence. Only reaction. And that reaction doesn't need permission. What follows is rarely something anyone expects, because nothing about it looks dramatic until it's too late. A jump that was never meant to happen. A slip that should have been impossible. A moment that takes less than a second but changes everything that comes after it. The same quiet danger exists in places we think of as completely harmless. A bathroom filled with still water. A bathtub left half full because it might be needed later. From your perspective, it is just delayed routine. From theirs, it is an unfamiliar surface that demands investigation. But curiosity doesn't always come with understanding. A step too close. A loss of balance. A sudden drop where there was supposed to be ground. And once inside, what seemed easy to escape becomes something very different. Smooth surfaces offer no grip. Panic replaces calm thinking. And energy disappears faster than it can be recovered. Not because they don't know how to swim, but because fear changes everything faster than ability can respond. And in other parts of the home, dangers remain completely silent until they are touched. A wire left slightly exposed behind furniture. A charger hanging loosely near the floor. Objects that seem static, harmless, ignored. But to a cat that has spent hours alone with nothing changing, stillness is not the same as safety. Stillness becomes invitation. A single bite, a tug, a test of texture, and suddenly something ordinary carries a force it was never meant to carry. Panic. And the kind of confusion that doesn't understand why something familiar has turned against them. None of it begins with intention. It begins with boredom. With curiosity. With time. And time is the one thing that stretches differently when no one is home. Even the smallest objects continue to matter more than we realize. Strings, elastic bands, forgotten threads. Things that belong to a moment of human activity but remain long after that moment is gone. To a cat, they are not leftovers. They are discoveries. But the body doesn't always cooperate with discovery. Once something enters where it shouldn't, it doesn't always come back out the way it went in. And what seems like a harmless game can become something the body struggles against silently, without obvious warning until the problem has already grown. This is the part most people never see coming. Because nothing looks wrong at first. Not until it is. And by now the day is almost over. The sound of keys in the lock is still far away, but the energy of waiting begins to shift again. A kind of recognition builds slowly in the space. Familiar patterns returning, anticipation forming without explanation. A cat doesn't count hours, but they recognize endings. They know when the house is about to change again. And when you finally step back inside, everything may appear exactly as you left it on the surface. A quiet room. A sleeping form. A calm house that gives no obvious clue about the hours that passed within it. But that calm is not the full story. Because what looks like stillness is often recovery. What looks like normal is often adjustment. And what looks like nothing happening is actually a full day of navigating a world shaped entirely by absence. A world where every small detail mattered more than we realized when we walked out the door. And as your cat finally moves toward you, slowly, carefully, as if checking that the world has truly returned to how it should be, there is a simple truth sitting quietly underneath everything that happened while you were gone. They didn't just wait for you. They lived through your absence in a world that you unknowingly built for them, one decision at a time.